Hello friends, welcome to Dungeons & Dragonfly, where I adapt various characters for use in D&D. I'm Dragonfly9078, and today I'm building Neferpitou, which I am absolutely sure I am mispronouncing. For a bit of background, Neferpitou is an ant, specifically a chimera ant, a species that takes traits of whatever the queen eats and infuses them into her offspring. Neferpitou is the oldest of her royal guards, and is utterly dedicated to protecting and serving first the queen, and then her strongest child, the Chimera Ant King. So what do we want from this build? Well, first we need to make zombies. Pitou's Nen abilities let them create puppeteers to animate corpses. For those who are still living, we'll need some healing, since Pitou generally acts as the king's personal medic. And if we need to fight, we can even puppeteer ourselves, enhancing our physical abilities and even fighting after our own death. Looking over at ability scores, I'll be using the standard point array. If you want to roll for stats, that's fine, just make sure your strength and wisdom are high enough to multiclass. We'll start off with a 15 in strength. Neferpitou fights barehanded and can rip a man's arm off. Dexterity's lower than I'd like, but Pitou is one of those anime characters who would have high stats across the board, so I'm working with what I've got. Our constitution is 12, we can take a hit from the king without dying, and we figured out surgery and Nen manipulation from books, so we'll make intelligence 14. Our senses are sharp enough that we need a 13 in wisdom for good perception, and we'll finish up by dumping charisma. We really only need it to be scary, and we'll get something for that later. Now I was going to say something about how tabaxi doesn't really fit, because despite looking like a cat, Neferpitou is actually a giant ant, but that I'd be using tabaxi anyway since there's no giant insect race. And then they came out with an Unearthed Arcana with Thri-kreen in it, which are in fact giant insects, so, thanks for killing my joke, wizards. Anyway, tabaxi get +2 to dexterity, +1 charisma, 60 feet of dark vision, and innate proficiency in perception and stealth. We also get a set of claws that we can use to make unarmed strikes, dealing 1d4 plus our strength modifier slashing damage. They also give us a 20-foot climbing speed. Tabaxi are also exceptionally agile. When we move on our turn during combat, we can double our movement speed until the end of the turn, though we can't do so again until we have a turn where we don't move at all. We will respect our insectoid heritage with our background, if not our race, as an agent of the Golgari Swarm, giving us proficiency in nature and survival, though we're going to swap out nature for proficiency in medicine. For our language, we can take Crawl, which are the insect race in the Golgari, and we get some Golgari spells added to any class spell list that we might have later. But again, that's for later because we're starting out as a Barbarian, getting us 2 skills from the Barbarian list, namely Intimidation and Athletics, along with Unarmored Defense to make our AC 10 plus our Dexterity and Constitution modifiers while we aren't wearing armor. Barbarians also get Rage, which I'm going to call our Terpsichore, puppeteering ourselves to get advantage on strength checks and saves, resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and additional damage to our strength-based melee attacks. At second level, we can attack recklessly, giving other creatures advantage on attacks against us in return for getting advantage on our strength-based melee attacks. And we develop our instincts with a Danger Sense, giving us advantage on dexterity saves against effects we can see, like spells and traps. Third level barbarians pick a primal path, and since we're so single-mindedly devoted to the king, I'm going to say Path of the Zealot. We're a warrior of the gods, meaning that when we die, other creatures don't need to spend material components in their spells to bring us back to life, like Revivify or Raise Dead. And with our Divine Fury, we enhance our attacks with our Nen. While we're raging, the first weapon attack we hit with each turn deals 1d6 plus half our barbarian level additional necrotic damage. To hone our senses, we'll take the Perceptive feat at 4th level, rounding off our wisdom to 14, changing our perception proficiency into an expertise, and making it so we don't have disadvantage on perception checks from being in a lightly obscured area. Starting at level 5, we can make an extra attack whenever we take the attack action, and our speed increases by 10 feet. That does include the climb speed we get from our claws, by the way, so we have a 40-foot walking speed and a 30-foot climbing speed. 6th level zealots get Fanatical Focus, letting us reroll a failed save once per rage, so that an unlucky roll doesn't stop us from serving the king with everything we have. Now, something that's noted about Terpsichore is how quickly it can come out and immediately begin attacking. So at 7th level, we get Feral Instinct, giving us advantage on initiative checks and preventing us from being surprised if the first thing we do on our turn during a surprise round is enter our rage, as well as Instinctive Pounce, letting us move up to half of our speed as part of the same bonus action we use to enter our rage. Neferpitou has an especially menacing aura, so at 8th level we'll pick up Menacing, rounding off our charisma to 10, bumping our intimidation proficiency up to an expertise, and letting us replace one of our attacks with an attempt to intimidate an enemy. We make an intimidation check against a target's insight, and if we beat them, they're frightened of us until the end of our next turn. 9th level Barbarians get more savage with Brutal Critical, adding an additional damage die whenever we crit with an attack. And 10th level Zealots can inspire their allies with their very presence. Once per rest, we can use our bonus action to give up to 10 other creatures within 60 feet advantage on attacks and saves until our next turn. Now this is flavored as just being inspiring, but knowing Neferpitou, this is probably more scaring the shit out of the other ants as to what will happen if they fail. 11th level Barbarians can defy death with Relentless Rage. As long as we're raging, if we would drop to 0 HP, we can make a Constitution save to drop to 1 instead. The save DC starts at 10, but increases by 5 every time we pass, then resets to 10 on any rest. We'll grab one more feat at 12th level. Skill Expert rounds off our Strength to 16, gives us proficiency in Arcana for our Nen studies, and bumps our Medicine proficiency up to an Expertise. Then at 13th level, our Savagery increases even more, as our Brutal Critical now adds 2 additional damage dice when we crit instead of 1. 14th level Zealots are even better at defying death than other Barbarians, with Rage Beyond Death. While we're raging, we don't fall unconscious at 0 HP. We still make death saves and everything, but even if we would die from failing enough death saves, we keep getting dragged around by Terpsichore until our rage ends. Now hypothetically we can get healed above 0 HP before our rage ends and not die, but Pitto is the medic of the group, so that's unlikely to happen. Speaking of, we need some healing abilities, so let's switch gears and jump over to Druid. We learn the secret Druid language so we can pass messages to other Druids without anyone catching on, and we get spells. Primal Savagery is a cantrip that lets us make a claw or bite attack that deals up to 4d10 acid damage. Do note that even though it's a melee attack, it is a melee spell attack, not a melee weapon attack, so it doesn't work with our reckless attack. We'll also grab Spare the Dying from the Golgari list to stabilize unconscious creatures with our medical knowledge. For first level spells, Jump triples our jump distance, Long Strider increases our walking speed by 10 feet, and we can sense other people's Nen with Detect Magic. Second level Druids get Wild Shape, so we can finally put the debate to rest and turn into either an ant or a cat. We're not going to do that though, because our Wild Shape is going to fuel our Nen as a Spore Druid. We learn Chill Touch, sending a Tendril of Aura to deal up to 4d8 necrotic damage to a creature within 120 feet, as well as preventing them from regaining HP until our next turn. If they're undead, they also have disadvantage on attacks against us in case any of our puppets somehow go rogue. Our aura can also damage people just for standing near us. Whenever a creature starts its turn within 10 feet of us, or moves within 10 feet of us, we can use our reaction to force them to make a Constitution save, dealing 1d4 necrotic damage on a fail. Then we can focus our aura by expending a use of our Wild Shape. It wraps around us and protects us by giving us 4 temporary HP for each of our Druid levels. For up to 10 minutes, we also roll 2 dice instead of 1 for the damage of our Halo of Spores, and we deal 1d6 necrotic damage with all of our weapon attacks. Third level Druids get second level spells, and the main one I'm interested in is Healing Spirit, which conjures a stationary spirit in a 5-foot cube. Whenever we or a creature we can see moves into the spirit's space, we can have it heal them for 1d6 HP. The spirit sticks around for up to a minute with our concentration, or until it is healed a number of times equal to 1 plus our wisdom modifier. It's not the most effective healing, but then Neferpitou's Dr. Blythe doesn't magically heal people, it performs surgery. We can spread out our N to find people and things with Locate Object and Locate Animals or Plants, and as a Spore Druid we get 2 spells that are always prepared. Gentle Repose prevents the targeted body from rotting or becoming undead for 10 days, and Blindness Deafness forces a creature to make a Constitution save, or be either blinded or deafened for a minute, though they can end it early with another Constitution save. It's not 100% in character, but it is nice that it doesn't require concentration, so we can have it up while we're in our rage. We get 1 more ability score improvement at 4th level. I would bump Strength to 18, as well as 1 more cantrip. Mending is my choice here, since we can use it to stitch together the pieces of a corpse so we can puppeteer it. Speaking of, 5th level Druids get 3rd level spells, and the only one I'm interested in is one of our Spore Druid spells, Animate Dead. We turn 1 corpse or pile of bones into a zombie or skeleton that's under our control, and follows our mental commands. It stays under our control for up to 24 hours, though we can reassert control over up to 4 undead at a time by casting the spell again. Our other Spore spell at this level is Gaseous Form, which turns us into mist with a 10-foot flying speed, gives us resistance to non-magical damage and advantage on strength, dexterity, and constitution saves, but that's not really something we do, so let's move on to our capstone, the 6th level of Spore Druid, increasing the damage of our Halo of Spores to a d6. Now, Animate Dead takes a full minute to cast, which isn't much use in combat, so we get Fungal Infestation to make puppets on the fly. A number of times per day equal to our Wisdom modifier. If a small or medium humanoid dies within 10 feet of us, we can use our reaction to puppeteer it as a zombie under our control. Unfortunately, since we can't take our time and fix up the body with Dr. Blythe, they aren't as effective as the ones we normally make. They only have 1 HP, the only action they can take is the attack action, and even if they survive combat, they die after an hour. Now that the build is complete, the question becomes, how good is it? Well, despite having only 13 AC, we are really hard to kill. We have a respectable 160 HP, temporary HP and healing from our Druid levels, and our Rage giving us everything from resistance to damage to re-rolling failed saves to just straight up not dying when we're killed. We're also highly mobile. Between our feline agility, instinctive pounce, and feral instinct, not to mention our climbing speed, if we ever get ambushed, we can counter-ambush by immediately entering our Rage, running 120 feet, some of which can be straight up a wall, and still have an action to take when we suddenly appear in the enemy's face. And even though I normally count multiclassing Barbarian and a spellcasting class in the downside section, these two actually mesh really well together, since we can use our Spore abilities while we Rage, especially Symbiotic Entity, to pile onto our damage and tanking capabilities. On the other hand, other than our strength, we really don't have too many stats worth writing home about, with 12s and 14s across the board and a 10 in Charisma. Our healing abilities are also a lot more realistic than most D&D healers in that they're really slow, and they don't immediately restore us to fighting shape. We can patch people up with Healing Spirit, but that's a maximum of only 18 HP per cast. And finally, I know I mentioned it in the pros section, but it is still a detriment that we can't cast or concentrate on spells while we're raging. Admittedly though, it's much less of one than normal, and it's actually even in flavor, since Pitto can't use Terpsichore and still have their N or Dr. Blythe active. Make your puppets and protect your king. Just be careful playing rock, paper, scissors. It wouldn't do to lose your head.
Even from birth, Neferpitou already possessed incredible power. This revelation, while celebrated by the Chimera ants, casts a dark shadow over the fates of Gon and his friends.
I hope you enjoyed the build. If you have any feedback or suggestions for characters you'd like to see me build, please leave them in the comments below. Leave a like or subscribe if you want to see more, and if you want to support what I'm doing here, you can check the description for a link to my Patreon, for access to the Discord channel and early access to future builds. Thank you for watching, friends. I will see y'all later.